welcome to the show. This is your Business Morning. Let's get the show started. I am Busin Amafaye. This is the first business and market day, so let's get the show started. But this is very important. The specter of insecurity now a threat to Nigeria's economically stable southwest from the original northeast, northwest, and north central. The authorities said the military and more policemen are being drafted into Nigeria's southwestern states in the face of rising kidnapping, violent killings, and highway banditry. The country's southwest of Oyo, Ogun, Ondo, Oshu, Ekiti, and Lagos are Nigeria's most stable and secure region in socio-economic terms and a major artery of the country's link to West Africa. Now, the authorities says there will be more interventions to nip this in the bud. Meantime, the country's Joint Admission and Matriculation Board says the melee of corruption must be tackled first at examination malpractice level, often sponsored by the parents. According to the bulletin published by JAMB, it says that many corrupt leaders today might have started off on this path through experimenting with examination malpractices. The bulletin went on to say that it is a fallacy to think that such individuals would outgrow such acts. The polluting effects of corruption warrant the adoption of a holistic approach in fighting it right from the school level. And over the weekend, the Central Bank Chief, Godwin Emefiele, encourages the heads of ministries, departments, and agencies to announce their roadmap of policies and actions. Emefiele says the heads of agencies should have a desire to tell the world or Nigerians what they want to do when they are given a responsibility to hold a public office. So let's get to the markets. A very brutal market week at the equity side. We finished last week. Nearly 370 billion naira lost on the stock market, plunged despite the listing of Airtel Africa PLC, which was a cross listing. Let's add this over to Temple Ashaju, who's doing a bit of a look back and look forward for us for the marketplace. Temple, good morning. Welcome to the program. Take it from here. A very brutal week for the stocks, but the unlisted securities market managed to stay in a rally.
Sure, Bosin. Good morning. Thanks for joining us here at the Stock Exchange. And of course, last week, things weren't too good in the market, in spite of the fact that we saw some an addition of 1.02 trillion naira to the market capitalization or the equity capitalization in the market. We saw some real dip in the total, the all share index of the markets. We were down week on week, some 2.41% or thereabout. And of course, if we look at what we had on Friday alone, it was down 1.86%. So if you add that to the losses that we had recorded in the week, it was a total of 2.41% decline last week. Of course, we got Airtel listed. That's some good news. Airtel got listed, and of course, we saw 11% decline in the share price eventually. It came in as over 300 naira, 362 naira thereabout. At the end of the week, it closed at 323 naira plus in the market. So that tells you that there's basically no catalyst in the system. There's really no news, and that's why we're having this level of sentiment that we're seeing in the markets. Our activity level last week was mild. We saw markets, hitting the 30-day average a couple of times. And of course, on Friday alone, we saw 188.43 million units of shares traded, valued at 3.17 billion naira for deals of just for the deals put at 3,105. But if we do the week-on-week analysis, you got 988.49 million units of shares traded for the week. Worth 13.83 billion naira, all in 16,414 deals. On the sectoral front, on Friday, we got just two sectors that performed well, and that's the banking sector, which is up some 0.64%, and the oil and gas, which is up marginally by some 0.01%. But on a week-on-week basis, the banking sector was the only segment of the market that was able to sustain that momentum, and it closed the week 0.78% positive. But all other sectors in the market that we track were actually down. For the NASD OTC, we got a positive close on Friday, but that was not enough to outweigh the negative sentiment that closed the week. for the entire 5-day trading session. On a week-on-week basis, we were down 0.40%. You got market the market capitalization at 525.05 billion naira, while the US side, the unlisted securities index, was at 730.82. On Friday, we had seen volume at 135,000, but when you do the weekly calculation, we had a total of 470,384 deals in total. On a week-on-week basis, 46 million units of shares was traded on the platform, the NASD OTC, and in general, we had just 48 deals. Of course, CSCS and Freeland, as well as Union Bank Properties, dominated the transactions that we saw for the greater part of last week. On the fixed income side of things, it was a bit quiet on a week-on-week basis as well. We saw that there was the fact that there was no primary market auction, there was no open market operations by the CBN last week. Of course, we saw that on the secondary side of the market, there was a dip of 34 basis points on the average week-on-week, came in at 12.65%, and at the short and the long end of the curve was where we saw all of these transactions. Treasury bills on its own side in particular was down in total by, on the average by 51 basis points. My average bond yield actually closed the week 17 basis points down, and that's 13.77% on the average for bonds generally, where we saw the investors looking more at the long end of the curve, Bosun.
Yes, Tempo, a nice one there. You're chatting to Adedayo Bakari of Afrinvest. This is taking a bit of a look back. Yes, a very massive sell down last week, maybe a profit taking, earnings just around the corner. News are still coming through. What's the outlook? What are you guys going to be charging to?
Well, the point is we haven't really seen what's for the greater part of last week, there was no catalyst in the market. There was really no news. The only push that I think we really had was that of Airtel, and that was not enough to actually sustain the appetite of the would-be appetite of investors in the market. So we weren't able to really see that to change the sentiment in the system, in the market, as we had in the time of MTN when it got listed. I think that was in May, basically. So what I think investors are really waiting for right now is basically the earnings that will come in. Of course, some of them have started trickling into the market, but the banking stocks are basically the major picks in the market. They are the ones that investors really want to pay attention to, because again, they are the ones that sometimes get to declare some kind of bonuses, and of course the consumer goods companies, the consumer goods stocks of the that we have listed here in the market. There are some of them who that try to declare bonuses, dividends, and sometimes. So that's a space that traders and investors at large, whether retail or institutional investors in the Nigerian stock market here, are really watching, waiting to see how that will pan out, and so they will be able to take advantage of these type of opportunities when it comes on board. The other thing we're seeing right now is how investors have seen that prices are really still low in the market. It's a good time for them to make entry, and that's something that will be beneficial to them eventually when the foreign portfolio investors come back with attention on equities, because as things are right now, we know that FPIs are still more interested in the FX market and, of course, fixed income side of the market, basically.
Yes, Tempo, one of the earnings that you talk about coming through, basically the first half, second quarter, but one of those filings in terms of financial year was Flamills, Nigeria PLC, whose earnings just coming through for full year ended March 31st, 2019. This is a company whose financial year end is not December, but March. I'm sure you know that. Tempo, this is company reporting, Flamills reporting 20 kobo per share cash dividend proposed for the shareholders. That will have to be ratified at the next annual shareholders meeting. Pre-tax profit down from 16.5 billion naira in 2018 period to 10.2 billion for the period ended March 2018. This is what the company is coming through this morning, I'm sure. But the company says its operating costs was also, financing costs is also down by 30%. Tri says its debt profile is also down significantly within the period under review. Tempo.
Sure, Bosun. I think flour mill kind of up its dividend to investors this time by some 20% or thereabouts, which is good music to the markets here. A lot of traders and, of course, investors who really want to take advantage of that opportunity. It's a major consumer goods company here in the stock exchange, in the market. And, of course, it's something that, will really be able to help rake in some more money now into the consumer goods space as a sector on its own, which has really not been performing well in recent times. But, of course, that's a sector with a whole lot of potentials. Flour mill, of course, has got some competitors in the market. And so going forward, it's this healthy kind of competition is something that we see flour mill, grappling with eventually, because again, its major competitor in the flour side of things is Dangote flour, and now that is going to eventually, go out of the market, given the deal that they've actually struck with the other firm, which is not a listed company, and of course that will be taken over eventually. So everyone that you have under this sector will basically want to up their game, just like flour mill has actually now pushed out some kind of dividend. So it's a space to watch. Perhaps this is a catalyst for the market as market opens this Monday. It's a space that investors will really want to look at. I think 1 hour 20 kobo is some kind of a good prize for some investors by way of dividend, Bosun.
Okay, Tempo, thank you so much. I'm sure there's quite a lot you can share on this. You have a minute with Adedayo Bakari.
Yeah, that's doable, Bosun. And of course, it's to get the outlook of the market. I'm sure he will be able to give us that sense to let us know how things are going on will be going on for the rest of the week. Because this is Monday, as we said earlier, there hasn't really been so much for the greater part of last week. Equities hasn't been an area to actually really watch, but offshore investors have been far from it. And so we do hope that this week, with the way we have the federal government, gearing up to see how before the end of July the cabinet comes on board, by the cabinet members will be announced by President Muhammadu Buhari, and of course that will be channeled to the National Assembly for some kind of approval and all that. It's a major thing that we see investors watching, and so that is probably that's something that investors will possibly like to see. Adedayo, thanks a great deal for joining us on the program. So let's hear from you. You are an analyst. I'm just a journalist. Bosun is also a journalist, but we need to hear from you, the analysts. What are you learning as regards markets by way of outlook this week?
Okay, so we're in Q3 now, and the market over H1 was really poor. And even last week, we saw that market reached new lows. Year-to-date return is now down to 9.1%, which is very, very poor. This is in contrast to what we have seen, in advanced economies and generally in markets, generally where you've seen a very positive performance in 2019 so far due to, the easing of global monetary policy. Here in Nigeria, what we find is foreign investors are majorly looking at the debt markets and not looking at equities. And there are reasons for that. One, the general macro backdrop is still very, very weak. So growth has been very, very slow. Even with the earnings performance we saw in Q1, it's still a bit mixed, although we've started to see major improvements. But when you look at, say, the consumer goods sector now, which is like over, a significant share of the economy, you find that there's still a bit of struggle there. And even company earnings has not been that spectacular. You just mentioned the flour mill performance over, the last full year. So it's, a general trend in the market that earnings have not been good. So for the outlook of the markets, we're looking forward to really the cabinet of the government in at earnings performance in H1, which we believe should also show us a better sign of how the economy has progressed. Also, we're looking at global conditions. Global conditions remain favorable and will likely remain so over the immediate or short term. So when we start to see the federal government really come out to state its policies in terms of the reforms they are looking at, the strategies to boost government revenues, then we might start to see a bit of interest in equities going forward. But for now, the market is likely to be bearish.
But from what you're seeing, do you agree with me? A bit of analysis I've done and followed in the market, the fact that prices are really low and investors are taking advantage of that.
Absolutely, prices are cheap. The Nigerian market is cheaper than frontier and emerging market peers. Even when you look at banking sector, for instance, you find that the likes of Zenith, Guarantee, even Nestle, they are trading at lows that we've not seen since early 2018 and in 2017 for Nestle. So obviously that's a sign for investors to actually cherry pick on these stocks and hunt for bargains. So we should see a bit of bargain hunting in the market also. But generally, the theme sentiment will generally remain weak.
Do you think by the time the members of President Muhammadu Buhari's cabinet announce, that will also drive up a bit of performance?
Well, depending on the quality of the cabinet. So if the quality of the cabinet is great in terms of people who are manning the finance ministry, when you look at education, health, when you look at Ministry of Trade and Investment as well, basically when you have maybe people who have extensive experience in terms of policy making and who have done really well in those positions, then you can start to see maybe a boost in investor confidence, and also you see that impacts the equities market positively.
But basically, for this week, what's your outlook? Do you think
for outlook,
likely to turn green?
Likely, because market performance was woeful last week. So we should see a bit of bargain hunting in the market, which should spur a better activity than what we had in the previous week.
All right, thanks a great deal for your thoughts. Bosun, it's back to you now.
Yes, quite an interesting week we're going to have ahead of us. Of course, today we're expecting the Statistics Office to release the June inflation data, and that will be coming through with a bit of further data in terms of the kerosene, the oil and gas, the premium motor spirit data. Then, of course, later in the week we'll have the manufacturing data, then the transport watch data. So, Tempo, quite a lot, a very busy week on the economic calendar. Of course, by the Statistics Office, the June inflation data ought to be out yesterday, which is a Sunday, the 14th. We're expecting that to come through today. Temple Ashaju, thank you so much. I think we will all be looking forward to this. But what's the big news from the market this morning, which is Flamis of Nigeria reported that is full year 2018 for the period ended March 31st, 2019 was 1.9 billion naira improvement in terms of the numbers when compared to the same period of 2018. Full year profit before tax, 10.2 billion naira. That's compared much lower, about 5 billion naira lower than 16.5 billion posted in the same period of 2018. Then you have the deleveraging according to the company, the total net debt down by 21.2 billion and financing costs down by 30% to 9.8 billion naira as at the end of March 2019. You heard earlier, proposed cash dividend 20 kobo per share to 120 naira, 1 naira 20 kobo per share, and that is subject to shareholders' approval. Let's come back after the break. The Tony Elumelu Foundation is in a new partnership with the UNDP on entrepreneurship. This is coming just as we count down to the Tony Elumelu Foundation Forum, the 2019 edition, July 26 and 27. Let's take a break, and we'll come back with that.